we have a highly anticipated session titled AI Meets Open Finance, Fintech on Steroids for the Next Decade. And to lead us through this fascinating topic, we are joined by none other than Mr. Sharath Bulusu. Mr. Sharath is the Senior Director of Product Management at Google and heading Google Pay India, where he's been driving innovation to make digital payments more accessible and seamless for millions. His work is instrumental in contributing to the growth of India's digital economy through innovative technology and design. With a stellar career spanning roles at Twitter, The Guardian, Myntra, Tata Digital, and more, he brings a wealth of experience and knowledge in transforming digital platforms. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Sharath Bulusu.
I can just speak from here. I've got a mic. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you to the SamvAAd team for inviting me, and welcome everyone. I promised my 5-year-old that the next time I'm on stage and I have to say something about AI, because she's heard me practicing speeches at home, I would actually say the words, "Old MacDonald had an LLM, AI, AIO." I tried to see if I'd expand that O into open finance, but clearly my talents don't lie in the world of music. But I think this is a fascinating time for us to be witnessing what we are seeing built on top of digital public infrastructure, the opening up of opportunities for people, but at the same time, technology changing in a way that's become almost non-intuitive, even for people who've been working in tech for a couple of decades, to understand how it's going to evolve. And the reason I say that is we're going to see not just productivity gains because there is AI, but we're actually going to see real creative work being done by computers on a scale that probably was in the world of science fiction. You know, when I was in college and people would talk about this kind of stuff, you'd see that only in science fiction books. And now you're actually seeing molecules being designed by computers. And scientists, instead of being the ones who are coming up with the version of a molecule, are actually assessing whether that molecule is useful. So the creative work of humans is moving more towards judgment and skill and expertise. And of course, you've also seen all the stories about how we're going to get a lot more productive because we're able to use these tools. Why does that matter? Let's take a country of India's size, the opportunity and the problems we've got to solve. A retail credit business that's about 50% of GDP means that we've got a lot of growth to do. That's going to happen on the back of a lot of the technologies that you heard about today, right? A lot of the products and protocols that you heard about today, whether it started with Aadhaar or UPI or the increasing volumes that the account aggregator ecosystem is seeing. But all of this requires someone to look through reams of data and make very sharp decisions. If we are to make some of those sharper decisions that Kunal was referring to, saying, be more responsible, it is going to require people to do that without being fatigued, without being biased, evolving and understanding as new opportunities and risks emerge. And what we're beginning to see with the convergence of AI and open finance is exactly that capability. So I'll talk about a couple of things, maybe starting with open finance, but then working towards how the convergence of AI and open finance can help us. I remember when I was a product manager a few years ago working in London, talk about open banking was beginning to happen. I had a lot of colleagues who used to work in the banking industry. I worked in the media industry back then, building technology there. And there was a lot of excitement about how that was going to change the world of finance. And sure enough, I could see some things. I saw portability of accounts. I could actually move my account from Barclays to HSBC by filling one form, and then the whole thing got done. I felt very happy about that the day I had to do it, without having to change every standing instruction and so on. About 2016, I moved back to India. That was about the time UPI was beginning, and it was still very unclear whether this was really going to become a big thing. But as it started happening, and I got involved in looking at all the different types of public infrastructure that's being built, what I realized is that there's one unique thing that we've done here that's different from a lot of other countries. These are not just merely technical solutions. They are technical solutions that have also been weaved in with the right legislative and regulatory power behind them. This is something we don't speak about very often. It's very easy to give technology to a bunch of people, whether they're individual developers or private companies or public corporations, and say, go build on top of this. But these applications in the end have to interact with real people, real systems, and all of them are governed by different rules. Some very formal, like legislation, and some of them are informal. Those could be industry structures. And I think what's fascinating about what we've done is we've not kept them as two separate things. I think of it roughly as the American model being there is technology, go innovate, figure stuff out. There's a very heavily regulated model of saying here's legislation. Build whatever technology you want as long as you meet this legislation. And then you've got something in the middle that actually says here is enabling sets of protocols, enabling sets of ways to interchange data, enabling ways to connect. And you see this across the board. And the reason I'm stressing this is what allows it to become a product. As someone who spent a lifetime building products, for me it is, I can see a technology, but if I have to make it a product and put it in the hands of millions of people, hopefully billions, the only way that's going to happen is if you can give it that kind of opening. But the challenge it provides also is, how do you make this trustworthy for people? How do you make this compliant? And this is where I think we've gone from a world where somebody's had to sit down and write very prescriptive software, create very specific processes, to saying, hey, now the software can adapt to this. Think of the ways that AI and open finance will meet. The first thing that I can think of, and I see this every day at Google Pay as we build our product, is trust and safety. We were talking about this publicly a few months ago, that in the last year, when we gave warnings to users saying, hey, this transaction looks unusual. Are you sure you want to go through? We counted all the times people said, no, I don't want to go through it, and added up the numbers. 13,000 crores worth of transactions. Now, that's a tiny number compared to the full scale of UPI. So we should also be cognizant that this represents a tiny number. But for an individual to whom that happens, that can be a very significant thing. And so I think, and when we look at the algorithms that have gone on behind this, they started out as heuristics. We applied ML-based methods. Now we are increasingly using AI to say, can we actually figure out what the next kind of scam is going to be? Let's think of social engineering, right? How does it happen? Someone calls you. You folks might have gotten calls about, hey, there's a FedEx package in your name with some random bad stuff in it, or your phone is going to get shut down because TRAI said there's bad stuff happening. Let's say you want to detect that. You're a software engineer working in a company. You want to detect that this is happening to your user. First of all, you can't hear their conversation. Can we figure out a way to make that happen safely on your device? Second, you hear the conversation, and you don't know if it's a genuine customer service call for a true customer of one of the courier companies, or it's a scam. Third, you don't know in which language the scammer is going to speak, right? They might talk to me in Telugu or Gujarati because I speak those languages, to somebody else in Tamil or Hindi because they speak those languages. The script is not going to be fixed. They also adapt. The scammers have also adapted to a lot of this stuff. Now imagine that you have the ability, and this is now true, that you can actually hear a part of that script and go, this is a bad call. And the way you do that is you can actually have large language models generate variants of a scam that you can describe in very clear technical terms. You can say the scam is done by convincing a human being to believe that there is a package in their name that contains bad material, and an LLM can create different kinds of scripts. This kind of way of creating training data at large volume, at large scale, safely, is just one of the many applications of something like AI in trust and safety. But if you go ahead further and you say, let's say you want to assess the creditworthiness of an individual. We are all very fortunate that most of us are salaried or run businesses that have, regular records. These records are super helpful. Bank wants to underwrite you. Might be a little bit of a pain, but you provide the information, you're done. The account aggregator ecosystem takes a lot of that pain away. But now start thinking about people who have to bring unstructured data to this problem and say, I'm in agriculture, I'm a gig worker, I have uncertain flow of income and uncertain flow of expenditure, right? somebody's got to sit down and apply judgment to it. In a country of our scale, for this to happen, where these records are going to come in many different languages, they're going to come in many different forms and shapes, we need technology that can adapt to it. This is, again, one of the strengths of AI, that it can do this work adaptively and do it really well. We've been looking at, I don't know, if I take a simple example, shops and establishment certificates for small merchants. You go to every state, it's a different language. And by the way, those certificates change every few years in the way they look. It sounds simple. It should sound like a computer should be able to do it, but it's taken us a while to get there. The one other thing that I would say is, it's not just in areas like trust and safety and in credit worthiness, which sound like, how do you use computers to bring risk down? You can actually enable inclusion for people. Most of us who've tried AI tools, how many people here have tried AI tools using a chat interface? Almost everyone's tried it using a chat interface. The likelihood is most of the AI tools you'll use will not be based on a chat interface. In fact, probably that interface was not specifically developed by one designer or human being. Because the new paradigm there is you can actually adaptively create the right UI for the person. So let's take an example of, I'm going to apply for health insurance. Now, what is appropriate for me might not be the same for someone else, right? But all of us see the same questionnaire. All of us wonder, there are 30 questions here. What are the right answers for them? How do I understand what this question really wants to get, et cetera? But imagine something that adaptively tailors the questionnaire to you, asks it in a language that works for you, guides you through the process based on the specific types of documents you have or the specific kinds of information that you have, that is able to tell you the true value of whether it's an insurance policy or an investment or something else that you're getting, again, in a form that you can understand. This is where I think the magic will really lie, because we're going to take hundreds of millions of people in the country who we think today digital technology is easy, but let's not be fooled by the fact that many of them do find it intimidating. A lot of people here, I'm sure, have had the experience of having to help a relative or a friend or a coworker with what to us seems like a simple app. Right? To us, it feels like, oh, this is just a simple online form, and we've all had to spend that time helping someone. That problem, when we start taking it away, we not only make it easy for people, we give them the self-respect and the agency to say, I can do this on my own. And that goes a very, very, very long way in people feeling confident about this stuff. So I think these are just 3 examples that I wanted to talk about, where as open finance becomes possible, all of this data becomes available, we can actually bring AI-powered tools to make it safer for people to use. We can actually enable, whether it is assessing creditworthiness, whether it is underwriting for things like insurance, et cetera, enabling people to get access to services, and then finally just opening up inclusion for everyone. The last thing that I would say is, as we built AI tools, a lot of people also express concerns and worries about it, right? At the end of the day, all of these tools have been built by people and in some form will reflect what the people who built it believe, the way they operate. Right? When we build algorithms of any kind, it will reflect in some way what we hold as the principles or values underlying it. So it's also important that as an industry, we all come together to say, thinking about how data is used, thinking about how systems are kept free of bias, thinking about how synthetic data is used, all of these are really, really critical things. And these are not easy problems. We have to accept that these are going to be hard scientific problems, they're going to be hard social problems, and they'll have to be solved together. But what also gives me hope is that when I look at the way a lot of the digital public infrastructure in India has evolved, it has shown that we can do this. Now, I think as AI starts pervading the space, we'll have to do that all over once more, except it's a harder, much harder scientific problem in some ways. But with that, thank you very much. Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge,